How's it going? Today I'm talking about Dopey 2027 Marathon 2027. Start here.
This is Running to the Castle, a podcast for injury-prone Run Disney runners on a journey to running magical miles. Join me, Dr. Allie, as I share the secrets I've gathered as a runner, doctor of physical therapy, and coach. You'll learn the exact ways I get my clients to the castle strong without feeling broken or held together with KT tape as they cross the finish line.
So you may be thinking, Allie, this is way early to be talking about Dopey 2027. Marathon weekend just happened in 2026. And honestly, that's okay if you think that this is too early to start talking about it, thinking about it. In my opinion, it's not. And I had a conversation with some members at Marathon Weekend, and I am going to talk about why it's not too early to get started thinking about this. But now that I've said that, let me give a little recap. So since the last time I've recorded, Marathon Weekend has happened. And if you didn't know, I went and I got to watch all of my stronger, faster finisher clients, all my one-on-one clients who were running Marathon Weekend, 10K, half marathon, full marathon. I got to see them each and every day. Unfortunately, I did not get to see the 5K just based on the timing of when I arrived in Florida. I hadn't even planned on going to Marathon Weekend because I didn't do any running. But when it came down to it, a couple of weeks before Marathon Weekend, the stars aligned and I could go down and spectate. So obviously, I got a chance. I'm going to go. And it was so amazing. I am so glad that I did because I got to see my runners run, which was amazing. I got to meet them in person, which was amazing. I got to meet some Instagram followers, some podcast followers. That was amazing. We decided that every race weekend that I go to, we are definitely going to do a meetup because I love the online coaching, the virtual coaching aspect. Absolutely love it. But there is something so magical about being able to actually be in person together. Like, I love the video aspect. I love being able to see everybody every week throughout the training. Stronger, faster finisher, it's about 6 months earlier or longer if you get in earlier from the wait list. And we get to see each other week after week after week. But seeing in person, hugs, I'm a hugger. So getting some hugs, nothing beats it. So thank you so much for coming to the meetup, giving me a nice sweaty hug on the course. I was on Main Street for the half marathon. I was at the starting line and the finish line for the 10K. And I was at roughly mile 18, somewhere between 17 and 18 in Animal Kingdom for the full marathon. And then I headed over to the finish line to catch people at the finish line. And it was amazing. I was heading back to my resort after the half marathon. I was literally in line for the bus and I got a text saying, "Hey, are you still in the finish area?" And it was one of my stronger, faster finisher clients. I was like, "I am. I'm on my way to the bus. I'm, on my way back to the resort near the buses. Where are you? Let's meet." And so she was walking there with her partner and said, "Okay." I said, "Well, what resort are you going to?" And I just headed over to her bus. I got out of line, headed over to her bus, got to do a nice sweaty hug. It was amazing. My my sweatshirt after the half marathon day, it was so funny. You could see all of like the dried sweat spots from where I gave hugs. And it's great because that means you were working hard. It also means it was hot, right? It was hot, but it was perfect. So if you felt bad for giving me a sweaty hug, please don't. That is absolutely no problem. Clothes are easily washed, and that's exactly what I did. It is no problem. It was so fun to be able to see everybody just as they were running through Main Street, as they were running through Animal Kingdom. I had a client who on the marathon, she was like, "I just needed to get to you. My goal was to get to you." And she did. And that was amazing. 18 miles, furthest she had ever run in a marathon. Well, not in a marathon, just ran so amazing. We have so many victories from marathon weekend. I I'm just so amazed. I am so proud of each and every one of you for putting in the hard work. You can do hard things. You put one foot in front of the other and you did it. Marathon weekend, temperatures were an issue. It was really hot. It was really humid, especially marathon day. They did raise a yellow flag for marathon day, which meant, there's a warning. It's not ideal conditions for running. And many people did get overheated. So if you experienced that and had any issues, whether it was just not the race that you wanted it to be, whether you DNF'd, didn't get the pace you want, got, your course cut because they did cut the course at a certain point. They got to a point where it was going to be too much. So I heard that the medical team was really overwhelmed. There were so many people that needed medical attention that continuing on at the rate they were going with the heat, with the yellow flag warning and everything like that, they decided it was the best course of action to cut. I think it was right before Blizzard Beach, around maybe 11 o'clock, I think. Don't quote me on that time frame, but that's roughly, if I'm remembering correctly, that's roughly when it happened. And that was for safety. So even if you didn't finish the full marathon because they cut the course short, you still earned that medal. Remember, the marathon, the actual race that you're doing, that is the victory lap of the full 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe even 12 months of training. We're going to get into why that might be 12 months of training. You did hard things week after week after week. One day sometimes doesn't go as planned. And that's okay, because think back to the other non-race day victories, non-pace victories. Are you in a better place now because of the training that you did leading up to this, right? Were you consistent with your training week after week, showing up 3, 4, 5 days a week? How did you change with how you took running as a whole? How are you with your strength training, your stretching, your recovery activities, your fueling, your hydration? Have you learned anything new of that, even if race day didn't go according to plan for whatever reason, especially because of heat? Because we can plan for so many different things. We can plan for being in the last corral. We can plan for having hills, the different types of course. We can plan for how much fuel you need. There are so many things that we can plan for and accommodate. Weather is just something that is out of our control. Sometimes it's too cold. Sometimes it's too hot. Sometimes it's too windy. Sometimes it's too humid. Sometimes it's raining. Sometimes it's snowing. Maybe not in Florida with the snow, but for other races, right? So there are things that are very much out of our control. Did you do the best with what you had in your control, with your training, your fueling, your stretching, your strength training, your costume choices, your shoe choices, right? Let's think about all of these other aspects that may have been a big success. I had my runner who ran her furthest distance ever. She also felt the best after 3 days of racing than she's felt before. She woke up that morning ready to go for a marathon after having done the 22 and change miles, the 5K, 10K, and half marathon. She had fueled better. than she had ever done before. She had done a faster half marathon by 4 minutes than she did the previous year after having done the 5K and the 10K. Having an improved time after doing 2 other races, I want to let that sink in what a big deal that is. Now, of course, we don't need to always think pace victories, but this one happens to be a pace victory because normally I recommend going for PRs on races or proof of time on races where it's the sole activity. It's not a challenge weekend. You're not doing 5K, 10K, half marathon, and then full marathon and trying to get your best time or get a proof of time during those races. I recommend doing those as standalone and even doing them in complete ideal conditions. Pick the perfect temperature for you. Pick the perfect elevation for you. Do downhill, right? Like all of those Revel mountain races, those are good ones to get proof of time. As long as they're still not calculated, balanced out. I know for like Boston Marathon qualifying, I do think that they do some math to even the field if you're doing a downhill. I don't know if that's the same for Disney though. I'll look into that. But right, like when we're talking about getting a PR or doing a proof of time, going faster on these races, I recommend those being standalone. So when that happens on a challenge weekend, that's a big deal, especially in those not ideal conditions with the heat, with the humidity, 2 a.m. wake ups, right? Like we can't get away from the 2 a.m. wake ups in Disney. It is a part of life in the Run Disney community. That's the way it is. But that's so that you have the coolest weather and so that you can run through the parks. If they were going to have you start at 8 a.m., it's going to be hotter and it's not going to be through the parks. So I want you to think about all of these different aspects where you had a win this year for this race weekend. And let's think about those, not just dwelling on if it didn't go as well. But if it didn't go the way you wanted it to, or maybe you're new to thinking about doing Dopey or the marathon or something like that, that's what I'm going to talk about now. And at the meetup, I talked to a couple of my Stronger, Faster, Finisher members, and honestly, they may have convinced me to do a marathon. So if you're new here, I have not done a marathon yet. I used to say I never would, but never say never. The thought process has started really trickling in. And they were like, oh, well, do it for Dopey 2027 or Marathon Weekend 2027. Not Dopey. My first marathon is not going to be Dopey. Well, never say never. I might be saying never. I'd like to do a marathon first before going for Dopey. It's really the 4 2 a.m. wake ups in a row. Spectating, getting up all that time each day in a row, woof. That was rough. And I didn't even run. So I can't imagine how I would feel day after day running as well. I am doing Springtime Surprise, so that will give me 3 days of running. Clearly not the same distance, but those 3 wake ups in a row. Anyway, to be determined. But we were talking marathon. And so they said, well, what about Marathon Weekend 2027? And I said, honestly, in this next year, I just don't think I have it in me for all of the training. So that's my first point. If you're thinking about doing Marathon, Goofy, or Dopey for 2027, you've never done them before, and you're like, oh my gosh, it was so amazing seeing everybody at Marathon Weekend. I would love to do that. I really want a Dopey medal. I really want to complete a marathon. The first thing to think about is, can you realistically put in the time for the training? Because to have success for these distances, you need to have that solid base of training. And if you're not sure what that looks like, I'm going to lay it out for you. So I will talk Dopey. I will say Dopey. Keep in mind that my marathon, solo marathon training plan, and my Goofy, which is the half and full marathon, those 2 training plans are the same timeline. They all start June 29th, 2026. That's when the training will start for Marathon, Goofy, or Dopey 2027. Marathon is happening on January 10th, 2027. So June 29th through January 10th. That's a lot of training. So can you commit to that many months of training over and over and over again? And can you commit to the longest long run, the peak week long run in December? Now, I mentioned that one because that's the longest long run you will have. So if you're new to my training plans, I do have free ones on my website. So if you're new to them and this sounds interesting and right up your alley, go ahead to the link in the show notes and you can download the free training plans. You get a PDF and all sorts of information. But I'm going to kind of give you a layout here. So the way I recommend training is you increase your weekly long run, your mileage by 10% each week. It can go up to 15%, and I do that for my 5K distances, but for all of the other ones, I keep it to the 10%. So that's why it's June 29th as a starting point. In addition to that, I recommend maxing out if you're running a marathon or any of the challenges that include a marathon, you max out at 20 miles. You may be thinking, well, how am I ever going to know that I can do 26.2 if I stop at 20 and still have a 10K left? This is where my training plans are different. I recommend you go so slow on your long run each week that by the time you get to your 20 miler, that 20 miler will take you the amount of time you anticipate your race marathon take you. So as an example, if you expect your marathon over marathon weekend to take you 7 hours, I recommend that you go so slow on your long runs, specifically your 20 miler, that your 20 miles takes you 7 hours. So you save your joints, your muscles, just your overall body. You save it from all of that extra pounding of that extra 10K, but you go the length of time it's going to take you on race day so you know that your body can sustain that amount of activity over that amount of time. And then race day adrenaline kicks in and you go faster, and your speed work kicks in and you go faster. Typically, my runners go about 90 seconds per mile faster on race day, some even faster than that. But that's, in general, what happens. So think about if you are planning to do the marathon, Goofy, or Dopey, that your longest long run is going to happen around December 14th or December 20th. I have to actually look at the calendar to see what that weekend day is. And it's going to take you 7 hours. Can you commit to 7 hours that one day to run your longest long run? And then each week leading up to that, it's 10% less time. Okay, so 7 hours minus 10%, it's the week before, minus 10%, it's the week before, and so on and so forth. So your first long run is 3.1 miles, but you're not going your race pace, even though it's only 3.1 miles. And so let's say your race pace is going to be 15 minutes per mile. Well, a 5K would take about 45 minutes, right? Give or take. But we want it to be about 30% slower. So 45 minutes, let's add another 15 minutes or so, okay, to just round up. So that first 5K is going to take an hour. So your long runs each week are going to take anywhere between 1 and 7 hours. Can you commit to that every week for about 6.5 months? If the answer is no, that's okay. Just know that that's what it's going to take to train for a marathon or one of the challenges that includes a marathon. If the answer is yes, wonderful, great. Now let's talk about the next things that we need. To sustain yourself over the course of 6.5 months, you need to make sure that you are doing everything in your power to stay injury-free, to stay consistent, and to stay motivated, right? We don't need to be burnt out, so then we don't want to go run, because even if we start off strong and we train, July is going great, August is going great, September, October, if we burn out by November and December, well, those are critical months of training. And if we've burnt out or gotten injured, that's going to be no good. So we need to start at the beginning with some good habits to keep ourselves injury-free, to keep ourselves consistent, and to keep ourselves motivated. So the way I do that is I structure the training to make it so that you always want to go run. Excuse me. Let's take out that always, right? Like, we don't always want to go run, but that it's the least offensive way, right? Like, I don't always want to go run. I'm not 100% motivated all the time, but long term, I am. Like, I am super injury averse, and I know that if I don't stay consistent, I'm going to wind up injured. But do I always want to go for a 2-hour long run? No, I don't. Would I rather go walk? Yes, I would. So then I should just walk. And I accept that, okay, this one run didn't happen, but I did move. I moved my body, or I did something else, whether it be walk or maybe I'm going to go ride a bike, right? So what ways can we adapt the training so that on days that we don't feel like running, we'd rather be doing something else, whether that be a different type of activity or we just have work stuff going on? How can we make it so that it is moderately enjoyable? And so one of the ways I do that is I include cross training throughout the week. So that's another type of cardiovascular activity that's not running, because we're not elite runners, right? Like, we're certainly not getting paid for this. So some of the motivation can wane, right? So how can we make it so that we still want to go out and run? We make it so that some of our other activities aren't running. So I recommend Dopey training has 2 back-to-back long runs every week. Typically it's Saturday and Sunday, but that's just how my training plans are set up. In Stronger, Faster, Finisher, you know that if you do your long runs on Wednesday, I set it up that way. If that's the day that you can go run, great. I love it. Let's work this in. But for my standard free training plans, it just says Saturday and Sunday, because the majority of the time, that's when we're doing long runs, right? Because a lot of us work Monday through Friday. And so there we go. But just bounce it around. If you do your long runs Monday and Tuesday, just shift everything by a day or two, right? But include the cross training. Well, let me back up. So I said for Dopey, it's 2 back-to-back days. And then I do recommend 2 other days of running most weeks for Dopey. So that means 1 cross training day throughout the week. And cross training is not strength training. Not that strength training is not important. It is important. It's a separate, different activity. Strength training is there to build muscle and power. Cross training is to build heart and lung function. So strength is for your skeletal muscles, your calf muscles, your glutes, your quads, your core, right? Your arms as well. Cross training is for your heart and your lungs. And it's a different activity than running. So you build up your heart and your lung function, their ability to beat and recover, fill up with blood, and pump out the blood efficiently. And then so that you can breathe and not feel like you're gasping for air and dying as you're running through the parks. Those other kinds of activities are things like paced walking, riding a bike, Peloton, spin class, rowing, swimming, elliptical, another sport like basketball, soccer, things like that. It's not running, but you still are breathing heavy the same amount that you would if you were running. And that builds up your heart and your lung function. But it keeps things interesting so that when it's time for your long run, it's not just another, oh, here's another run, same pace as always, same distance as always. That gets boring. Nobody wants to do that. It's not exciting anymore. But we can't make things too exciting, because if we make things too exciting, that means we're changing too much. And then we can get hurt, right? We need things relatively consistent, but with a variety. So do cross training, paced walking, Peloton spin class, rowing, elliptical. And then you have 2 speed workouts to work on your pace so that you can build that buffer between you and the balloon ladies. You don't have to panic the whole race, and you possibly have more time for character stops. Okay? So we're keeping things interesting by making it so that we're not always just doing the same old same. Oh, time for another run again. What are we doing today, brain? Same thing as we always do, try and take over the world. Like, we don't want it to be the exact same, but we don't want it to be radically different, because if it's radically different, there's too much thought that needs to go into it, right? Like, oh, what am I going to do today? It's got to be different. Keep me interested. Should I do this one? Should I do that one? That's too many choices, and then we're fatigued. We don't even want to think about it. So in Stronger, Faster, Finisher, I program it out. So you have Monday cross training. That's going to be your Peloton spin class. Tuesday is going to be your first speed workout. That's 45-minute, 30, 20, 10. Wednesday is going to be a rest day. Thursday is going to be your second speed workout. That's 45-minute progression run. Friday is going to be cross training. Saturday and Sunday, if you're doing Dopey, those are going to be your long runs. Those are easy. So Saturday you can walk it. Sunday you can do your run walk intervals. And actually, now that I'm just saying this, I did 2 cross training days in there. So one of those cross training days is going to be another rest day. So Friday, let's do Friday as a rest day. And that's what your week looks like. And then the next week, I have 2 other speed workouts that I flip flop. So instead of doing 30, 20, 10, you'll do hill. Instead of doing progression, you'll do tempo. And so then it's mildly different. So it's still a little exciting, but it also works your speed in a different way so that you are ready for race day. We can use those different types of speed workouts to incorporate on race day. Like 30, 20, 10, if you went for a bathroom stop and you need to get, make up those 2 minutes of time that you took in the bathroom, well, now you can do 30, 20, 10 for a little bit of time. So you are running a little bit faster, but still doing your run walk intervals, or maybe tempo so that you are changing up your pace throughout the course of the race. Like for my Stronger, Faster Finisher and my one-on-one clients this past weekend, based on where they were on the course, how the course was mapped out, I wrote out how they should be taking the course. So easy miles in the park, moderate pace on the highways, and even a progression run put in there to build a little bit more of a buffer between them and the balloon ladies. Because I had a lot of clients who were starting in F and G corrals, a lot in G corrals. So how can we make this so that you can have a bigger buffer, still enjoy your time, but not feel like you're dying the whole time? So we have mixed up easy and moderate runs in there. Well, how do you know what pace that is? You have to practice it. And so you practice it throughout the different types of workouts. Your speed workouts, you can practice your easy, moderate, and hard. Your long runs are your easy time. Or maybe you're walking some of them. That's fine, because it's about time on your feet when it comes to the long run. And then we're also looking at what your strength training looks like. You're stretching your mobility, practicing your fueling and hydration. If you're looking at doing marathon, Dopey, or goofy, now is the time to think about it, because if you didn't finish this past race, that's okay. But we want to build back up slowly. Maybe it had something to do with your pace. You can use those miles. You've built up all those miles. You've trained to marathon distance. Now, this is very specific if you got swept because of pace, not because you didn't train to the distance. So this is very much about the pace of it. So you've trained to the distance. Let's recycle those miles so we don't lose complete fitness. We can still do some of those miles. And now we really focus on doing pace and speed now. So maybe we rotate between 5, 6, and 7-mile long runs, but we're incorporating working on different ways to get faster. That could be working on what your walking pace is. And it's very interesting. I think I'm going to do a whole separate podcast episode about this. But with my Stronger, Faster Finisher clients who do run walk intervals, I play around with if they run more versus walk more versus run faster, but for a shorter amount of time versus walking faster for the same amount of time. Changing the walking pace, keeping it, let's say, as an example, 30-30 intervals, changing your walking pace to be faster versus changing your running pace at a 15-30 interval. Changing your walking pace was more doable, more sustainable, and actually got you faster in the long run because of it. So, but I'll do a whole separate episode on that. But, we're working on pace and speed if you got swept because of the pace or the speed that you were keeping. And so you can build that up now, January until June. And then when June hits, you start off at a faster pace already. And now you're ready to start into official Marathon Goofy or Dopey training at a faster pace. And so then you're more likely to have success as opposed to just waiting right now and just waiting. You know what? I'm going to give myself a lot of time off. I'm going to start picking back up in June when official Dopey training starts. I'm going to let myself recover, rest so that I'm full of energy when June comes around. That actually will work against you if you take all of this time off. Now, I'm not saying don't take any time off. Maybe in the next couple of weeks, we're just walking, keeping things up just walking wise. That's okay. And then we hop back into some training maybe in the beginning, like the first week or two of February. So then we've had some time off, recovered, and then we get back into it. And then also stretching and mobility. If you got cramps, that could be caused by muscle being too tight. It can also be caused by fueling and hydration deficiencies. So there are multiple reasons for that. Recovery tactics, things like that. It's important to make sure that you're working on each of these things at least a little bit from the get-go, because you want it to correspond with and correlate to how much you're training. And if you start with nothing and you wait until you're at training at mile 10 as your long run, and you've never stretched and you've never done the squeezy boots, the pneumatic compression devices, and you all of a sudden start doing all of these things, well, we don't know how your body's going to respond. And you may have to be in them for, I don't know, half an hour. And how's your body going to respond for that versus if you started doing it starting at just a 5K distance, maybe you're only in it for 10 minutes and your body acclimates and gets used to it. So it's not too early to start thinking about Marathon Dopey and Goofy. Even though it is January 2026, that's a whole year away. You can segment your training in different ways to best prepare for a marathon. That's a year away. You can do it avoiding injury. You can do it while staying consistent and staying motivated that entire year.